gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. Always great to be able to talk to you every morning. I want to welcome back to the program. We have Dr. Michael Busler with us. He's a public policy analyst, an economics expert, a professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. You've probably seen him as a columnist at Newsmax, LifeZet, and townhall.com. Dr. Busler, welcome back, sir.
Hi, Paul. How are you? It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I really had a blast talking with you last week, and I wanted to have you on again because I'm looking over some of the stuff that Arkansas is thinking about doing, and I know there's a lot of ideas get proposed across the country at a state level, but one of those ideas that we're talking about here in Arkansas is moving away from a gas tax, a traditional gas tax per gallon, and going to indexing our fuel taxes. Can you tell us what index fuel taxes are?
Okay, so not all states, most states put a tax on gasoline so many cents per gallon, and they, in theory, use the revenue to help pay for road improvements and infrastructure. So your government officials are saying, look, we raise tax revenue to pay what we have to pay for, but every year, because of inflation, it costs us more to build the roads and the infrastructure. So in order to make sure we have enough revenue to do that, we're going to index the gas tax to inflation. In other words, if you put a 20 cent per gallon tax on gasoline and inflation is 3%, you're going to raise the 20 cent tax by 3%, and you're going to keep doing that every year to make sure there's sufficient revenue to pay the expenses. And that's the theory with doing it. Personally, I think it's a terrible idea. It ends up guaranteeing that you get a tax increase every year, number one, and number two, going back to the theory as to why you need it in the first place, you could argue you really don't need it because if inflation is 3%, then on average the price of gasoline is going to go up 3% also, so you're getting your increase anyway. This is a terrible idea. It's just a way to increase the amount of taxes that consumers pay. And remember, when you put a tax on any consumption, any goods that consumers purchase, if you put a tax on consumption, it's a regressive tax, which means the lower income earners feel it more than the upper income earners. So from that aspect, I don't think it's fair. It's something that's certainly not needed. My vote would be don't do it. The state of Maine had it in, and just recently, because it caused so much problems with consumers, just recently they decided to reverse it and just go back to how they had it before, a certain amount per gallon.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that about Maine. I'm going to look into that. So Maine had an index fuel tax system, and they've gone back the other way because it's it's nice for people who want more and more revenue going to the government, and you're basically saying that this is going to enable, it guarantees them pretty much every year an increase in revenue from the people when it comes to paying for gasoline.
Exactly, and it affects the lower income earners the hardest because most of their income goes to consumption. They don't, because they have low income, they can't save a lot. Mm-hmm. So if you put a tax on any products that consumers buy, any consumption, it's a regressive tax, and I don't favor regressive taxes at all.
Yeah, and folks, there's an article at the front page right now at conduitnews.com. It's a report on the task force on tax reform. And while right now it appears it's a net loss of revenue to the government, meaning more money back in the hands of the people, one of the proposals is to index fuel taxes, indexing them based on inflation rates of construction costs, the minimum of current year rate, max at 3% over the tax rate of the previous year. This could really drive more revenue in the long run over the future. So it certainly is a little bit of a red flag, and that's why I wanted to have Dr. Busler on to talk about this so he could explain exactly.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. And no, Paul Harrell is not here, even though he was sort of for a brief moment or two before we jumped in. Paul is on vacation for the rest of this week. I'm Jan Morgan. I'm going to be filling in for him. And we are so excited that you have decided to join us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here at Conduit, and we can't do it without your help. There are many ways that you can help us at Conduit, and we want you to stay engaged with us and stay engaged with our government. Of course, you can do that by logging on to their new website at www.conduitnews.com. There's also a phone number you can call throughout this show if you wanted to get more information, if you want to join Conduit and actually be a paying member, which is always good because they could use your support. The number is 870-275-9799. I have with me today Senator Linda Collins-Smith, and I asked Linda to join me because a lot has happened since you've had a Labor Day weekend off. And let me just tell you, it has not been good. Certainly not been good for the Republican Party, and it's not been good for the state of Arkansas. Listen to what happened. If you got away Friday, this came down Friday. And of course, I wonder how much of that was planned in advance to release it on a Friday of Labor Day weekend when nobody's going to be around their TV sets or reading their newspapers. But this is big. It's really big. We've had this corruption probe that's been leading to, and has already led to, the convictions of 5 Arkansas lawmakers. Well, it flared up again as of Friday with the indictment of the chairman of the State Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican Jeremy Hutchinson, of course, related to Governor Asa Hutchinson. Related investigations by the U.S. Department of Justice and the Arkansas Attorney General's office span at least 3 states, folks, 3 states. But the sad thing is, it's not over yet. And of course, the sentencing phase for a number of those that have already been convicted will begin this week, this Wednesday. I think it's tomorrow, exactly. So, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, this has been a tough past year for the Republican Party and for our lawmakers. And of course, I wonder how you're feeling at this point about what's happened.
Well, you're talking in reference not only to Jeremy, but to the legislators who are being indicted and as a whole, and those that are charged. It's
Right.
very disappointing. I think it's embarrassing for the state of Arkansas, obviously. And we've already have an issue with trust with our government officials, elected officials. And I think this has just compounded that. And as you know, I requested Senator Hutchinson, along with Senator Rice and a few others, for him to go ahead and resign once an announcement was made before on charges he has not yet been charged for.
Well, he resigned. He decided to resign. So, and just so you know, in case you haven't read the papers or you aren't up to date, he was indicted. Jeremy Hutchinson was indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, accusing him of misspending campaign donations and underreporting his income on federal tax forms. Now, Linda, I feel like calling you Linda,
Yes.
Senator. It's my understanding that some of these guys didn't actually think they were going to end up in jail. Now that it looks like some of them are actually going to jail, do you think that we're going to hear more? Do you think that there's going to be more people talking and telling more than they originally said they were going to?
Of course I do. And that happens as it gets closer to the time to go to court. That will happen. And I can't imagine they would not, in order to cooperate with the other FBI or whoever the other law enforcement is. I think that they will do that. And I would advise them to cooperate. And I'm like I said, I'm very disappointed. And what we saw, by the way, with Senator Hutchins, and we've seen some folks make the comment, Jan, that, this is not what we thought he was going to be charged with. But it's not over yet.
It's not over yet.
There's
right.
more to come.
These are the lighter charges that could come. As you know, this investigation was involving fallout for the investigations. Let me just kind of let you know this. The cost of one of the largest behavioral health service providers in Arkansas, all of its state's business, all but 4 of the 14 people charged. And so we've talked about 5 lawmakers, and now Jeremy Hutchinson 6. 14 people overall have been charged so far as a result of the investigations that have direct connections to the provider Preferred Family Health Care, which is in Springfield, Missouri. That involves employees, attorneys, lobbyists, board members, et cetera. What we're going to cover in this show, we're going to try to get to all of it, but these are some things that I wanted to cover with you, Linda, as well as with the folks. Corruption in state government is a serious problem. We're going to talk about the legislation that was put, that you, and I think Terry Rice, or was it Brian King? Yeah, wanted to put out that would kind of put some walls up that would prevent this sort of corruption, and it didn't go through, which is absolutely unacceptable, folks. When you have a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, there is absolutely no excuse for Republicans not doing the right thing by the people and passing legislation, any kind of ethics legislation that's going to hold our legislators more accountable. Has to be a good thing, is it not? And I'm going to ask you more about that in just a second, but we're going to cover the corruption in state government. We're going to find out what it's costing the taxpayers. It's not only is this an embarrassment, it's a costly embarrassment for not only the people who've been arrested and some convicted, but for all of us. Your tax dollars are paying for this investigation, and we're going to kind of do a quick rundown for you on that. It is also eroding the public trust, as if we didn't already have issues with lawmakers on the state and federal level. Now we have more reason for the people of the state of Arkansas to not trust their legislators. And that's hard on good legislators who haven't done anything wrong. It's hard on all of you. How it's dividing the Republican Party, I hope we're able to get to that today, because it certainly has. And we've got some sound and a videotape with Jim Hendren, Senator Jim Hendren, that I think you'll find interesting, related to this division in the Republican Party, and he was contributing to that. And then we're going to talk about why the Republican legislators voted down that ethics legislation, and then what you can do, what the people can do. What do we need to do now to kind of make a difference in this? So, Linda, I want to go back to this legislation. You guys tried to do something to put some ethics legislation out there. What happened with that? Why did it not go through with Republicans in control?
Well, because they fought it on the Senate floor.
Who's they? Can we name call?
We'll go and we'll name names. So,
yeah, I want you to name names.
Yes, we have to do that. And I think that's part of what you mentioned earlier is that there's no trust. And we talked about that. People need to be able to trust again. But as a legislator, if you've not done anything that's illegal, you certainly don't want to be put in that same bucket.
Right.
Name names, but don't put me in that bucket. Don't
put
others
and
that
until
haven't
you name
done
names,
anything.
that's right.
And
we know we've got some dirty Republicans. We know we do.
And
just like Democrats are dirty. Both parties, all parties have their problem areas. But what I wanted to do when you called me in, last year before last, to get involved in state politics, and
year before last now.
Yeah, I bet some people wish you'd never contacted me, because I was out there on the national level. For those of you who don't know me, I was out there on the national level doing work for the folks of America. And Senator Linda Collins Smith is one who drugged me back into Arkansas and said, "You need to help me. We've got some problems here." And boy, do we ever! I had no idea. So what was the legislation? What would it have done?
The legislation would have actually put some teeth into the actual problem. When we are held down with this new ethics issues that Senator Hendren and Senator Dismayne are leading, those issues are going to, that ethics plan to me is going to hinder legislators from doing their job. The people have already vetted them. The people have already said, this is who we want. We know what their history is. We know that they have this background, and we elected them. So when they come in with knowledge of things, we need to use that knowledge. They should not profit from it. That's where the crimes come in. When you're profiting, if you're bribed, those types of things, you should just do a full disclosure.
Well, the gift fund was part of the issue. And has that not been eliminated? I know the Arkansas Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional.
Right. And I think that when you're looking at taxpayer funds, I'll give you my personal opinion before I go back to the bill that you asked about. I believe that if we have additional taxpayer funds, it should be distributed back to the people, not to one person, which is our governor, who has control over it to decide where he wants it to go.
Right.
And so I prefer that it's spread back to the communities. That's my personal opinion, if there's additional tax dollars. And so and actually it's not the general improvement funds that caused the problem. It's legislators who decided and agencies that needed to take money and put it in their own pockets instead of doing what their job was. That's the failure.
Right, because some legislators wanted to actually do something with it that would have helped counties, struggling counties, for example, fire departments, rural county fire departments that needed a new fire truck and they didn't have the money. I think that was the original purpose, voting machines for counties that needed to replace bad machines and they didn't have the money. I think that was the original intent of that money. And then all of a sudden it was being sent to political buddies who own private businesses. And suddenly we were picking and choosing business owners to get nice gifts, financial gifts from the government.
Right.
And I know, like the governor's discretionary fund, he gave $950,000 to Taekwondo and Associates so they could have a new building in downtown Little Rock. There was over $250,000 given to Ben E. Keith Company. There are businesses in this state. It allows legislators, lawmakers, and a governor to pick and choose winners and losers. Right. And I think that's wrong. And I think the people, if they had a chance to vote on that, would say that it's wrong too.
Right.
That's not where we wanted our money to go.
On the bill that you asked about, when we get back to that, the person that fought it the hardest was Senator Hutchinson on the floor. And he really
the ethics legislation?
On the ethics legislation, he fought it really hard. It would have affected his livelihood. That's correct.
It would have affected his livelihood.
But it would have helped taxpayers. Taxpayers would have kept money in their pocket. There's more accountability. If we do not have legislation and we do not have ethics issues or bills that have teeth in them, we have to punish the criminal and we have to let legislators go do their job.
Okay, but I want to know names. Now, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson was a Republican. He fought the ethics legislation. What other Republicans fought it? Because he alone couldn't have stopped it.
Senator Trent Garner fought it. To some point, if you watch the video, it was pretty much felt like Senator Hendren fought it. He voted for the bill, and I thought that was good. But he did not. I think he was very uncomfortable doing it, but he did it. And Senator Bond had questions, but he really did not fight that bill. And so those were the main players in that. That I feel like if you go back and watch that video, because Kenny Wallace came and videoed that. And so there's actually, but we're not for citizen and or people like Conduit media coming down and taking maybe AFP and citizenry coming to the Capitol, which I'm so proud of our activists to come down and take those videos or be in committee rooms where they can get that recorded. We would not have that record.
And isn't it interesting? That's one of the things I talked about when I was on the campaign trail, because I listened to people, and people around this state said, I want to be able to know what my legislator, what my representative or my senator is doing on my behalf, representing me in my district. And I can't find out. It's hard to get the information. So, one of the things that I wanted us to do, and I've yet to run into any taxpayers who don't agree with me, and that is we want video streaming of all our votes, all our committees, and we want a roll call vote so that there's also a written record of how each of our representatives votes on every single issue. That way we don't have to, depend on somebody's word.
Right.
So what are the odds of that happening?
I think that it's coming. And I wish time and time again that we had a record of what was said on the Senate floor. There's so many times I wanted to refer back to that, and it's not recorded unless citizenry or one of the groups that I've mentioned come to the Capitol and records that.
Right. Well, we're getting close to a break here. They let me know we're going to have to go to a break around 6:20. So we're going to continue this conversation about corruption in Arkansas government. The first day I went to the state capitol a year and a half ago, the moment I walked into that Capitol building, it just felt dark. It felt, in spite of all the light coming in, there was just an ominous feeling there. And there were conversations going on even at the elevators where people were openly saying, how much is it going to take? How much is it going to take to legislators, representatives, and I couldn't believe how open the discussions were. So these are some things that have got to change, folks. And corruption in government, hopefully that these indictments these are just the beginning. There's going to be much more coming down the pike, and we're going to talk more about corruption in Arkansas government, what we can do, how much it's costing you, the taxpayer. And we're also going to talk with Josh Waters of Conduit about some statements that Senator Hendren made, referring to Conduit as, well, comparing it to a terrorist organization. You're not going to believe this. We're going to find out what Conduit thinks about that. And we're going to have much more with Senator Linda Collins Smith after the break.
What this is and everything else. And so I certainly appreciate that. I want to get your take on, when we had you on last week, Dr. Bustle, we talked a little bit about China and the tariffs and the trade war. And I love how you said, listen, I'm a free market economist. And so when you hear the word tariffs, it kind of makes you cringe. But then you also had some good things to say about the results of some of the negotiating tactics of the Trump administration. Can you kind of refresh us on that real quick?
Yeah, so Trump, too, is a free market person. He would rather have zero tariffs on everything. So he looks at the trade agreements we have, the NAFTA and with the European Union and with China and a few other countries, and he saw that they were all slanted in favor of our trading partners and to the detriment of us. For instance, with the European Union, they make a car in Germany or Italy.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome back. We're so glad you could join us. In case you are just now waking up, I'm Jan Morgan. I'm filling in for the vacationing Paul Harrell, a very well-deserved vacation, I must say, and his family. I hope that Paul is relaxing and not watching us and worrying about his show. He picked a heck of a time to be absent because it seemed like as soon as he left town, everything happened, and not for the good. You know, we had, in case you're just joining us, we've been talking about government corruption in the state of Arkansas, and we have already had 5 lawmakers indicted, convicted, and now we've got a 6th. Senator Jeremy Hutchinson on Friday, just before the Labor Day weekend, was indicted on fraud charges. He was indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, accusing him of misspending campaign donations and underreporting his income on federal tax forms. He was accused of spending that campaign money on lavish personal vacations, gifts, jewelry, clothing, all those things that we're not supposed to do as legislators with money that doesn't belong to us. So, and there are specific guidelines, ethic guidelines that are supposed to prevent that from happening. And of course, this is Senator Linda Collins-Smith. She's just joining me this morning to talk about some of these issues. And before the break, we were discussing with the senator, the legislation. She was one of the senators who was trying to get legislation passed that would put a wall up and prevent some legislators from taking bribes and accepting kickbacks. And yet it did not pass, which really upsets me because we have a Republican-controlled House and Republican-controlled Senate. So we have no excuse for not doing good things for the people of Arkansas. And ethics legislation, Linda, would have been a good thing, was it not? Can you tell us more about the bill? Do you have the bill number and information about that?
The bill number, if you need to look this up, was SB 726, sponsored by Senator Rice and I. And we fought hard on that piece of legislation. And it was sad because we want legislators to go down and not have special interest or their own interest. And I think that that's the caution that when the attorneys were given a loophole, so to speak, to do the bill and to get it passed, to make sure everyone was up and up. When you're even an attorney, you should not benefit from a single piece of legislation, for instance. You shouldn't profit from it.
Well, I've watched when I went to the state capitol. Right. I watched, and by the way, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, the one who was just indicted Friday, is one who fought the hardest against this ethics legislation. And so I've seen Jeremy, Senator Hutchinson, as well as others, play political games with legislation in committee so that it never even gets out of committee. I've watched that, and I couldn't believe some of the things I've seen happen to some very good bills. You know, the people don't understand, well, what happened to this bill and why didn't it get voted on? Well, it never even made it to the floor because it died in committee. That happens often. And if we had video cameras in these committees, people would be able to see who's saying what and who's not representing them well. So I hope that there will also be a push to get those cameras. Linda, we also need the ability to recall legislators. A lot of people don't know this, but because some states like Colorado, when they had some Republicans run as Republicans and they turned out to be rhinos. Other than that, the people of Colorado were able to recall those bad legislators almost immediately. And we need that same kind of ability here in Arkansas. Why do we not have that?
Well, I think that's partly your legislature. And I think we need that in any with anyone who's in power. We need to have something. And however that particular legislation is set up, however their laws are set up, I would need to look at that specifically. I always say that. I want to see what it says.
Well, we're going to have you look at that. We've got it. We're coming up on a hard break now, so we've got to go again. But we will be back after the 6:30 point, and we have much more of news and information from the #1 source of Arkansas conservative news and politics, Conduit News. Please stay with us.
Sell it here in the U.S., we charge them 2.5% tariff. American car companies produce a car here, sell it in Europe, they charge us a 10% tariff. Well, the result of that is we're buying a lot of their cars, money flowing out of the country when we pay for it. They're buying fewer of our cars, not much money of theirs is flowing in our country. We end up with a huge negative balance of trade to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars every year. Well, Trump said we have to fix this. So he talks to the trading partners and said, hey, we have to renegotiate. They're in no hurry to renegotiate. They're in a great position. So, if Trump was a politician, what would happen is they would convene a summit sometime in October. Our people would talk to their people. They'd come back. We'd discuss it for another 6 months. They'd meet again. And before you know it, you end up kicking the can down the road to the next guy, and nothing happens. President Trump says he's a business person. He's not a politician. A business person has to confront problems immediately because it's going to affect your bottom line. You can't have that happening. So Trump wanted to confront this as quickly as possible. You have trading partners who are reluctant to come to the table. So what does a business person do? You create a sense of urgency. So by putting on the tariffs on China, and they're going to hurt the Chinese far more than their Chinese retaliation will hurt us. China's economy depends on selling much of their output to the rest of the world, and much of that goes to the U.S. So if we stop buying their products, they're going to be in trouble, particularly considering all the debt they've used to run this up. Mm-hmm. So we put these big tariffs on, and the idea is let's bring them to the table and come up with a free trade agreement, trying to get as close as possible to no tariffs on anything.
So my next question, we're talking to Dr. Michael Busler. What do you think about economic incentive programs when it comes to the government picking winners and losers, and winners essentially in this case, when they give taxpayer money or incentives to try to bring companies in to quote, create jobs? What are your general thoughts on that economic development idea?
Yeah, this is a difficult issue. Your first choice would be to have an American company come in, build, and you not have to give any incentives. That would be your first choice. If you can't get that, then the next choice is, there are companies that are building plants that we'd like to have in our area. For instance, Amazon is building a new headquarters.
Bringing you your daily dose
Morgan,
of truth.
Filling in with
Conduit
him.
News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Not Paul, just Jan. Paul Harrell's on vacation. I hope he's enjoying himself. Paul, we miss you, and I'm sure the audience misses you. There's just no one like Paul. He is the captain of the Liberty Machine at Conduit News, and I'm just glad to be kind of next in line behind there to fill in for him, and it's an honor to do that today. With me is Senator Linda Collins-Smith, for those of you who are just now joining us, and Senator Linda Collins-Smith is one of my, if you look at the voting record, if you look at the Conduit scorecard, that scorecard is amazing, because if you want to, as a citizen, if you want to know, if you voted for someone because they're a Republican, and we all know what the Republican Party platform says that Republicans are supposed to be, but if you want to know not what a legislator says he or she is, but what their voting record reflects of them, because therein lies the truth. Conduit actually publishes on an annual basis the voting record of our legislators. So if you want to see how conservative, because Republicans are supposed to be conservative, right? So if you want to see what their voting record is, you can check out Conduit website, www.conduitnews.com, and find out what your legislator looks like. I know that Senator Linda Collins-Smith was your number 2. Senator Brian King, who's going to be on with us in the next hour, was number 1, I believe. You were number 2.
And I've been number 1.
Congratulations
so always
on that.
At the top. I'm proud of that. I'm always within the top 10, but always at the top. And because that's who I am. I'm conservative. Mm-hmm. And I believe in our platform. Right. And that's important. So be a platform Republican, not just a Republican. Follow your platform.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because, this has been I have a bone to pick here on this whole issue, because the Republican Party platform is very clear, very concise. It's in writing. And I'm just wondering if some of these people who've run as Republicans have actually read it, because Republicans are supposed to be about limited government. They're supposed to be about cutting spending. They're supposed to be about shrinking the size of our government. They're supposed to be about, serving the people and getting government out of the way of the people, out of the way of businesses, out of cutting regulatory burdens, bringing regulatory relief to business owners. And we haven't seen that. And I just don't understand it. Senator, when we have Republican-controlled House, Republican-controlled Senate, and a governor who's Republican, why are we not seeing some dramatic progress made in that direction?
And it's because the leadership of the state is going a different direction than the platform of the party. And I think that that's obvious by what is supported, Jan, and to the people, and by voting records. And if you look back, you can find out how someone is actually, that's the true, not that you won't change your vote and you can't learn, but legislators create law. They change policy. And remember that they are responsible. We have to look at the policy, make sure that we're doing the best we can to follow that platform if we're believers of that, and run on that ticket as close as we can, and then take account, responsibility. If we feel like we've made a mistake or someone brings up something that we didn't know, that's what a good legislator does. Then they go back the next time and they vote differently. And I think that's very important. And no one's perfect. You're always going to have, I'm imperfect, but I work very hard to try to follow the conservative, lead. That's who I am. And that's how I'm going to vote. And it's nothing better, Jen, than my district saying Senator Collins Smith keeps her word. She voted just like she said she would do.
Exactly.
When she ran the first time.
Exactly. And, part of the problem there is the voter. Yeah. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But you mentioned the leadership of the state. And I want to touch on that because, knowing that Senator Brian King was the #1 most conservative voting record in the state of Arkansas, and Senator Linda Collins Smith was the 2nd most conservative voting record. And the leadership that she mentioned, and I want to be more specific, the governor of our state actually openly endorsed and helped fund the campaigns of primary opposition for Senator King and Senator Linda Collins Smith. Now, why would you try to remove some of our most conservative Republican legislators? Why would you do that?
Because
if you're conservative.
Because you don't like the way they're voting. And that's a sad day for Arkansas, and for the Republican Party has really, each committee, Jane, has responsibility. What is their #1 job? To elect conservative, qualified Republican candidates. Let's say they're elected. That doesn't mean you quit looking at whether or not they are conservative. And if they're not, remember what's your #1 job duty in a committee. It falls on them to elect qualified conservative Republican candidates. Always their job.
Right.
And they need to always follow. It's kind of like I said in Northwest Arkansas, and I was there. I saw an article come out with Jenna De La Rosa, something, little tidbits. I've been in the hospital. So I have to say that I read that and I thought I was there, and I posted I was there. So I know very well what happened that night because I was visiting. I've been asked to speak in that area a lot of times, and I was at a neighboring town, and I just ran over to hear the program at the neighboring committee. And I was so proud to be there and saw great friends and great conservatives. And it's kind of like someone mentioned about the Bible. How do you know if we're voting conservative if you don't hold the Bible when the preacher's preaching? You can't know if he's preaching the word. So remember, look at your voting records.
Exactly. But, I would think, too, that our legislators would also, in the legislative committees, now you've been talking about the Republican committees, I'm talking about the legislative committees, that they would also look at every bill. #1, if it doesn't pass constitutional muster, it should never make it to the floor. Okay. Rather than looking at, I'll do you a favor. If you help me get this bill passed, I'll help you get this bill passed. Well, rather than trying to gain support like that, why don't legislators just go to the Capitol and say, I'm here to do this because the people of my district sent me. I'm here to represent their will, not yours or some lobbyist or whatever. Why is that not happening?
Well, I had a very good, I'll bring up a conversation that I had with a friend of both of ours, and that's Gary Epperson of Patriots of Act 746.
Snickers nickname. I'm going to tell everybody his nickname is Snickers. Okay, just so you know. If you see Epperson, give him a Snickers bar, and you'll be in good shape.
I think he'll be fine.
Yes.
And he's tall and he can handle it. So give him a Snickers. And but it's because we have lost in the education world, in our schools, we are not teaching the Constitution. We know it.
And the Bill of Rights,
so that when
right.
we go there as legislators, we don't eat, live, and breathe it all the time. You don't just know all the time if you've crossed a line or if you're getting there. Maybe you're working to get back to that and you've got to work back. That is a big deal in the legislature. Sometimes you can't always get there at once.
Right.
So timing, everything's critical in a piece of legislation, but knowing the Constitution and knowing what our unalienable rights are, which is different, maybe mentioned in our Constitution, but knowing those unalienable rights and fighting for those, and I think knowing it inside and out so that when we're talking, we can know it, that I think is a key. We've got to educate our children. We have to eat, live, and breathe it so that we know it immediately if we're crossing a line and are we coming back to the Constitution if we're whittling our way back.
Well, speaking of that, getting educated on the Constitution, Chris Ann Hall, a national level constitutionalist, a lawyer. She is an amazing, you're talking about, if you want to get educated on the Constitution, this woman is all that and a bag of chips. She is amazing. She's going to be in Arkansas speaking in a number of different cities. So you're going to get the chance to hear her. I know she's going to be in the Hot Springs area in February. I think, Reggie, you need to give me those dates, or get me the dates for me so that we can pass those on to people. But if you just watch for my Facebook page, I will certainly be announcing it. Look at Patriot 746 page. They will announce and let you know when she's going to be in a city near you. But if you get the chance, it would be a great evening to take the whole family and really get educated, because that is where we are having some issues, on a number of fronts, not just the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment. And so, getting educated is one way that we can win and we can start solving these issues. But another way that the people can help, because I told you at the beginning of the show, we were going to talk about what can you do? It's frustrating. There are a few of us who are engaged, who are plugged into what's happening at the state capitol, and getting madder by the day because so many people in Arkansas are not. And I understand people have got, you got to work, you've got kids to get ready for school, then you got after school activities. I understand. I was a parent before my kid graduated. I do understand. But there are so many ways that you can stay engaged. Even if you just get up every morning and listen to Paul Harrell from 6 to 8 a.m. or 6 to 7 or 7 to 8, you're going to get a good dose of what's going on. But people have got to vote. In this last primary election, 18%. Now, I want you to listen to this. Listen to this number. 18% of the registered voters in Arkansas voted in the May primary. That is pathetic. It is a pathetic testimony of the epidemic of apathy in this state. And folks, if you want your government to get better, if you want all this corruption to stop, you're going to have to get involved in your government. You're going to have to pay attention, not to what these politicians say they are, because during campaign season, we have learned that they just lie. They lie. They do. So you can't just listen to their commercials and say, oh, he's doing a great job, or she's doing a great job. Look what she says she did, or he said he did. You have to actually do your homework. So,
And Jan, one of the things I say to people, know your legislator. Know them across the state. I go across the state. I know a lot of people in the state because of the way I vote. They contact me or I contact them. And it's very important. They are your legislators. Get to know them. Build a relationship of trust. And if you can't trust them, you might want to look back and decide what you need to do in the next election cycle. Because remember what I said, the job of the Republican committees are to make sure that we have good qualified candidates. The next thing is the voters. You have to vote, and you have to check out your own legislators or the candidate.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Republican committees after the break that's coming up shortly. But before we go to that break, a couple more things I wanted to cover with you about you, the future. We're talking about people getting engaged. You did not win your primary, which was just mind-blowing.
18%. And no close primary.
Right.
In one county.
So, and that does hurt. That's something else we need to look at, because I know for a fact in a number of the small counties that I traveled, because I went all over the state over the past 7 months. Yeah. And I had Democrats, independents, and Republicans, even Republicans tell me, I would like to vote for you in my county, but Jan, I can't, because I'm going to have to vote on the Democrat ticket, because when you vote in the primary, you have to choose either Republican ticket or the Democrat ticket. And I'm going to have to vote. I need to vote on the sheriff's race or the county judge's race, and they're only Democrats running. And I want to have a say in that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they had to vote on that ticket. So that is a problem too. People need to be able to vote for the person, not the party. And I would like to see that change too.
But we do have party platforms for a reason, and that's the accountability. That's where the party committees need to hold their legislators accountable. If you don't think the Democrat Party has not done that, they have. And in the past, they've done it very well. As a matter of fact, too well.
Oh, no, wait. You're talking about in the state of Arkansas. I don't know about that.
Yes.
Well, on the federal level, they certainly haven't because they're not Democrats anymore. They're socialists.
Well, that's why I'm saying that we need to do a good job with making sure that the party platform means something. And we need to make sure committees, that's your job. Citizens, that's your job. You've got to elect the people that will hold to the conservative values you have.
Yes, because how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel as a conservative, a true Republican, to hear people out there in our state say, you can't tell the difference anymore. Republicans or Democrats, they're purple now. We don't have a solid red or a solid blue. You've got this purple legislator, and there should be a very definitive line and difference between the two parties, and it's not happening. And I'm sure that's the reason Donald Trump is our president now, because people said very clearly, not only in this nation but in Arkansas, the people said Donald Trump. So I think the people in Arkansas, they were paying attention then. I just wish they'd paid that much attention to our state politics.
I think leadership would. I wish they would too, and recognize that we voted for two of the most non-established, and the votes went to Senator Cruz and to Donald Trump.
Right.
And that's
Outsiders.
telling, and we should be paying attention, but somehow our leadership seems to be saying it doesn't matter. But I think it matters to the people of Arkansas. We're either going to get them to where they're not voting at all, they're going to quit voting again.
Right.
And they turned out for Donald Trump and
yes,
protect Cruz overwhelmingly in our state and in this country. Remember, and in this country. So I think that we have to be bold, and we have to be kind, and I think you have to be respectful of your legislators. If you want to talk to them, make sure that you're respectful of that. You will not always agree, but you can bring up your issue, and they will be thinking about that. They will think about what you said. And so I think that's important. Get back to getting to those legislators and let them know how you feel about the way they're voting.
So what are you going to do when your term is up?
I think I'm going to let you guys text Paul, and let's see what on Conduit. What should Linda do next? Won't we have fun? Because I have to let the good Lord open that door.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We need you at the state capitol every single day.
Yeah, well, you can't
being
lobby,
their worst nightmare. Because Jan Morgan, it was almost like everybody, when I walk into the state capitol, it's like, oh no, she's here. You could see people texting, and can you imagine if there were two of us?
Yes, I remember saying it could be worse. Me winning the election, at least you know what I'm doing. When I'm not, I said, that's when you have to beware. So I can do what I want to. So I think that I just have to trust the Lord, and policies were always thought that I was supposed to be during all of this. So I want to affect policy. What does that mean? I don't know, but you guys send a note. Let's see what Linda should do next.
I know what you should do. We'll talk about that after the show. I want you to stay engaged. We're counting on it. People love you in this state, and I'm telling you, the reason that happened is 18% of the voters, people maybe just assumed you had it made.
Yeah, there was one county we did not win. The others were, handily, and it was just there was 18%. There wasn't enough turnout to pull that back out. But I'm very proud of the votes we got in all the counties. We just needed a few more. So
gonna run again one of these days.
Let's see what the good Lord says.
Yeah. Okay.
Take it a day at a time.
Okay. All right. So we've been talking about corruption in Arkansas state government. We've mentioned in this past hour. Thank you, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, for being here with us. When we come back from the break, we're going to be talking to Senator Brian King. Senator Linda Collins-Smith was number 2 out of all the state senators for the most conservative voting record. And this is a woman who was a Democrat. Can I say that? At one time.
And
you were transformed.
Yeah.
And not only did you really transformed.
Oh, yeah. But I'm always conservative. I have a good record. So that's good. I am a conservative person.
Right.
Well, and I heard the Democrat Party was, but somebody lied.
Yeah, somebody wasn't honest with you about that. So after we come back from the break, we're going to be talking more about the Republican committees, because the Republican Party is divided. It was divided before all of this corruption happened, and now it's even more divided than ever. We're going to talk about why and discuss that a little bit with Senator Linda Collins-Smith after the break. And then Senator Brian King coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, along with Josh Waters, representing Conduit, to discuss some comments made by Senator Hendren, another relative of Governor Asa Hutchinson, who compared Conduit, the state's #1 source of conservative news and politics, compared Conduit to ISIS terrorists. Yeah, he really did. We're going to show the video We're going to show you the video. You're going to see him, you're going to hear him, and then we're going to get Josh Waters' response to that. That and much more after the break. Stay with us.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government, and the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Sell it here in the U.S., we charge them 2.5% tariff. American car companies produce a car here, sell it in Europe, they charge us a 10% tariff. Well, the result of that is we're buying a lot of their cars, money flowing out of the country when we pay for it. They're buying fewer of our cars, not much money of theirs is flowing in our country. We end up with a huge negative balance of trade to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars every year. Well, Trump said we have to fix this. So he talks to the trading partners and said, hey, we have to renegotiate. They're in no hurry to renegotiate. They're in a great position. So, if Trump was a politician, what would happen is they would convene a summit sometime in October. Our people would talk to their people. They'd come back. We'd discuss it for another 6 months. They'd meet again. And before you know it, you end up kicking the can down the road to the next guy, and nothing happens.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. Man, this is early for me. Senator Linda Collins-Smith is joining me. I'm Jan Morgan, filling in for a vacationing Paul Harrell. We've been talking about corruption in Arkansas state government and just hoping and praying that the people of the state start paying attention, because if you don't pay attention, get engaged, and do something about it. The voter is how you change things. People have told me, they want to disengage when you get so fed up with the government, whether it's federal government or your state government or your city government. The easy way out is to just back off and disengage and say, I can't do anything about this. This is overwhelming. It's too big. We're lost. It's over. But you know what? Our founding fathers never gave up. If anybody ever in the history of the world had a right to say, this is too much, this is too big, it was those guys when they were outmanned, out-armed, freezing to death, starving to death, trying to fight a battle against a well-armed British army. Most of our colonists were, even without clothes, starving to death and barefoot, many of them. And yet, talk about a reason to say, we can't win this, we can't fix this, we're doomed. It was those guys, and yet they didn't give up. And that's why we have to stay engaged and stay in the fight. I've heard people say, and I've heard people recommend, don't vote. You know, the voting doesn't work. Look where it's gotten us. Well, what's going to happen if you don't vote? What's the outcome there? Exactly. Because we just saw that in Arkansas. 18% of the registered voters bothered to vote in the May primary, and look what happened. We lost 2 of our most conservative Republican legislators. So, folks, you've got to stay engaged. You've got to get engaged. Let's talk about the Republican Party, Linda. Okay. So, because, you know, Republicans toiled for decades. Yes. Great Republicans like Dorothy Crockett. And I just want to give a shout out to Miss Dorothy. She's recovering and she's had major heart surgery. And, you know, Dorothy, I call her the queen of the state Republican Party. She's an amazing lady. And she's indestructible. The woman just defied all odds and survived major open heart surgery. And so we're glad that she is mending, but people like her toiled for years when being a Republican was like having leprosy. I mean, there just weren't any. Yes. But now Republicans have control of everything. We truly have a chance to make a difference for the people of the state, and it's not happening. We're doing we're going the wrong direction. So
that makes it very hard. I mean, it's very hard to keep it energized, and people say, well, what good does it do? We worked so hard. Well, for those people, others have to jump in there and work hard for them when they're kind of down. We've got to help them out as well.
Right. Well, I mentioned that the Republican Party is divided, and here's why. You've got and that's not just in Arkansas. It's nationally. We know this. Okay. Yeah. It's growing pains. Okay. People worked hard for years. They toiled. Now the Republican Party has a lot of power on the federal level as well as the state level in Arkansas. And what are we doing with that power? What we're doing is messing up. And pretty soon the people are going to be saying, well, look what happened. You know, the Republicans said, just give us the controls. Look at all those, look at all the corruption and bad laws that when Democrats were in control. So give us the controls. We'll fix things. And now look, we've got corruption. We've got increased taxes. We've got increased government spending. We've increased government spending by over $600 million, folks, in the state of Arkansas over the past 4 years. With Republicans in control. We've got to fix that. And see, that's why people like Senator Linda Collins-Smith and that's why I got in the middle of all this, because, you know, folks, it's disparaging the name of the Republican Party when we don't live up to the Republican Party platform and the policies. And so what we're seeing is committees divided, Republican committees across the state divided. And just recently, and we're going to play after the 7 o'clock hour, right after the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to play a video where the governor's relative, Senator Jim Hendren, recently stated at a committee meeting, he compared Conduit, which is the state's #1 news source for conservative news and politics. He compared them to ISIS terrorists. I think he should resign over that alone. There are other reasons as well, but you know, that kind of language. And he further stated that he felt like that they shouldn't be allowed to speak at committees. And the reason that really rubbed me the wrong way is because deja vu. I've heard that before. Jan Morgan, coming out of that same family, from the same family, the same message was sent to committees, the Republican committees. Jan Morgan doesn't need to be able to speak at committee meetings because she's divisive. Why? Because she's talking conservative. All I was doing was talking about the Republican Party platform and saying, hey, folks, remember what we're supposed to be? We're supposed to be all these things. Well, we aren't that anymore. So we need to get back to that, or we're going to lose control of our state, and because we're letting the people down. They said that those things are what they want, and that's not what we're doing. So, Linda, what are we going to do to bring this party together?
Well, I think we go and make sure we speak loudly in your committee. That's where you have to make changes. If your committee,
so if you're not a member of the Republican committee, you need to join and get involved.
If you believe in the platform, they need help. If there are too many liberals in your committee, you got to elect more conservatives to bring your platform back. And they have to be willing to speak up. It's their committee. It's their future. It's our state. And we have to be a part of what is changing in our country. We have a president that we voted for in Arkansas that we need to get out there and support his elected, the senators and all, and Congress that support our president to make change.
Right.
And we're not going to have it unless Arkansas participates. Because let me tell you, Donald Trump and every presidential candidate on that ballot came to Arkansas. They want ours. We have a voice.
Speaking of Trump, I've never really considered President Trump a conservative, but he has done a lot, has he not? We are out of time. We're hitting a hard break. Senator Linda Collins-Smith, always a pleasure having you. Look forward to visiting with you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. More Conduit after the top of the hour. Stay with us.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
President Trump says he's a business person. He's not a politician. A business person has to confront problems immediately because it's going to affect your bottom line. You can't have that happening. So Trump wanted to confront this as quickly as possible. You have trading partners who are reluctant to come to the table. So what does a business person do? You create a sense of urgency. So by putting on the tariffs on China, and they're going to hurt the Chinese far more than their Chinese retaliation will hurt us. China's economy depends on selling much of their output to the rest of the world, and much of that goes to the U.S. So if we stop buying their products, they're going to be in trouble, particularly considering all the debt they've used to run this up. Mm-hmm. So we put these big tariffs on, and the idea is let's bring them to the table and come up with a free trade agreement, trying to get as close as possible to no tariffs on anything.
So my next question, we're talking to Dr. Michael Busler. What do you think about economic incentive programs when it comes to the government picking winners and losers, and winners essentially in this case, when they give taxpayer money or incentives to try to bring companies in to quote, create jobs? What are your general thoughts on that economic development idea?
Yeah, this is a difficult issue. Your first choice would be to have an American company come in, build, and you not have to give any incentives. That would be your first choice. If you can't get that, the next choice is, well, there are companies that are building plants that we'd like to have in our area. For instance, Amazon is building a new headquarters, and they've looked at a bunch of sites. Each site is offering them a tremendous amount of tax incentives to locate in their municipality. And, of course, the reason is simple. Once Amazon comes with, I think they're looking at 50,000 employees, it's an economic boon to the area. So people say, well, look, if we use some taxpayer money to lure them here, we're going to more than get it back. Now, there's some debate whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but that's the theory. Now, suppose you have a foreign company from China, for instance, looking to build a plant in the U.S. Well, we'd like to get the plant here in, you would say, in Arkansas, so we may have to give some incentives to lure them here. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? Well, as long as the foreign company like China is not doing anything with proprietary knowledge and is not stealing any trade secrets or anything, but if they're coming to build a plant in the U.S. anyway, you'd like to get it in Arkansas, perhaps you can use some tax dollars to lure the company here. So there's no real clear-cut answer whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. It depends on what side you're coming down on. Clearly, you don't want to use taxpayer money to go to a company outside of the U.S. On the other hand, if you can invest $100 of taxpayer money and it generates $1,000 worth of activity with new jobs and the purchasing power that the new employees have, that may be a good investment.
You know, I really appreciate your thoughts on that. I mean, I to be honest, I disagree with the concept of, giving taxpayer dollars to companies to try to get them to locate here, because I think if they can be recruited here, they can be recruited away. I would rather just, eliminate the corporate income tax and things like that, try to treat all businesses equally. Here in Arkansas, it's a strange situation because we have a skilled workforce shortage. And so we have a situation here, Dr. Busler, where existing Arkansas businesses and their tax dollars are going to recruit, whether it's China or whether it's any company, a business to come in here and then be able to hire existing employees away, right, at a higher subsidized wage. And they claim that that's a job created, when in fact that's not a job created. I mean, how many of these jobs are going to be filled by people who are right now on the couch, watching TV? And that's where, that's where the rub is how do you actually gauge the effectiveness of this. But regardless of that, yeah. I'm a realist. I understand. Look, I may disagree with this, but all states are doing it. Every state out there sweetens the pie and does that sort of thing. So,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning. Welcome to the 7 o'clock hour of the Paul Harrell program. I'm Jan Morgan filling in for Paul. I hope he is relaxing on a beach somewhere. Come to think of it, I'm not even sure where he went on vacation. He didn't tell me, but I am honored that Conduit asked me to fill in for him, and those are some mighty big shoes to fill. Paul Harrell is amazing. He is the captain of the Liberty Machine at Conduit News and an amazing guy. So it is an honor to be asked to fill in for him this week. Anyway, we've been talking over the past hour about corruption in our state government in Arkansas. We have an epidemic of corruption. I can tell you the first day I walked to the state capitol, I said, wow, this doesn't feel good. And if you haven't ever, as a citizen of Arkansas, if you haven't ever gone to the Capitol during session, you really should take the time to do that. I know it's a lot of people, it's hard to take off work and do that, but you need to know what's going on in your state government. And rather than just listening to politicians tell you what they're doing, sometimes it's good to just check and see if that's really what they're doing, because as we've learned too often, politicians say one thing and do something else. So I have with me Senator Linda Collins Smith, and Senator Brian King is standing by. But before we go to Senator King, I want you to listen to this video. Watch this video. It's coming up. This is Senator Jim Hendren, a relative of Governor Asa Hutchinson, speaking recently at a Benton County Republican committee meeting. Listen to how he compares Conduit News to ISIS terrorists. Listen up and watch.
I'm in the military. I've been overseas at least 5 times in the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the most disturbing things for us in the military is when we have what we call insider attacks. And this happened a lot in Afghanistan. We would have people that we were training, Afghani nationals that we were training, who would put on the uniform of the coalition, who would take our supplies and our food and our training and then walk in with a suicide bomb or walk in and start shooting our own guys. I mean, it's bad enough to get shot by the enemy, but to get shot by your own team, it's inexcusable. It's so hard to understand. Well, we don't have anybody obviously shooting each other, but here's what we have in our Republican Party. In addition to an energized opponent who's found opponents for every one of our incumbents, we have some folks in our party who have put on our uniform, who've said they're Republicans, and after the primary is over, when we're supposed to come together, are continuing to attack our people. And I'm telling you, we've worked too hard to let that kind of stuff go on. I've lost some primaries, and it's not been easy, but you do the right thing and you get behind the winner and the nominee, and you do what you got to do to keep moving the ball down the field. But we've got groups, let me give you some specific examples, and I think you all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be shy, it's Conduit. They have given money, $5,400 to Charlene Fight's libertarian opponent, and in a fall election after the primary. They have spent hours attacking our Republican nominee, Bob Ballinger, in a Senate race against a Democrat and a Libertarian after the primary in this election season. They have had the Libertarian opponent against our Republican nominee for governor on their show numerous times, and they continue to trash our Republican nominee for governor. They have called this task force that I've talked about, that we spent a year trying to figure out how to cut taxes, a farce. They called the medical reform task force that I chaired, that we spent a year making reforms that saved the state hundreds of millions of dollars, literally over $800 million, a farce. And then they want to come and tell us they're on our team. Well, I hope that this county committee, because this is where the Republican Party, I believe, was built and began for this state, starts to take a stand against that kind of activity. To have people who want to do that come and speak to county committees, I think is inexcusable and needs to be stopped. So I guess I'm just telling you that I have absolutely no problem with people tearing each other up in the primaries. That's the way the process works. If you disagree and want to light up somebody in a primary, knock yourself out. But as a team, when the primary's over, we've got Democrats in the legislature right now because the Libertarian took so many votes from the Republican that the Democrat won. That's what this kind of foolishness that we allow to happen causes. So, again, I call them like I see them, and I'm going to make some folks mad with that, and I'll probably get trashed on the radio and some mean newspapers or articles. I don't care. I'm just telling you that we've got to stop that kind of stuff. We've got to start coming together as a party and focusing on winning for Robin and for Jim and for Gayla and for Cecile, for these people who have. Do you have a Democrat opponent today? Libertarian. They're not on our team. We need to support our team. So that's my pitch.
Okay, so just going to break that down just a little bit for you, and I'm hoping that we have Senator Brian King, the state's #1 most conservative voting record for senators. Senator King, are you on the phone with us?
Yeah, Jan, I am.
Okay, thank you for joining us this morning. Brian, were you able to hear that? Did you see the video and heard what Hendren said?
I heard it, and
yeah. I want to know your response to that. What's your response? What's your initial reaction to that?
Well, Jim says he calls it as he sees it, and he's being honest about what he says. And the way Jim sees it is that if you question or do anything or your principles are actually conservative and that you're a terrorist. I mean, that's just it. I mean, you're a terror to them, and it just gets into one of these things. It's just a totally outrageous comment, but it just goes back into the thing of these guys don't like you speaking out about anything they do down there. They don't like you calling them out. They want you to align with what they want to, and if you don't, they're going to do everything they can, whether it's lie about you, whether it's try to get major money to try and beat you and funnel,
which is what they did to you.
Yeah,
which is what they did to you.
They sit there and said things. I wasn't conservative, and I wasn't, this, and they sit there and said
and yet you got the
like
most conservative voting record.
And I wasn't this, and yet I was endorsed by Right to Life, and I was endorsed by Mike Huckabee. So they just continually will do anything or trying to silence you and say anything, and it even makes it into you're a terrorist. You're somebody that's going to go blow somebody up. I mean, I'm surprised right now. I don't know. I don't know what you and Linda are wearing right now, but I don't think you're wearing burqas right now. And
oh goodness,
I don't think that you have suicide vest on you right now. Do you? I mean, do you? I don't think so.
But he did compare. But he did compare to his to jihadists. I mean, that's what he compared.
I mean,
which is why you mentioned the burqa thing.
And but here's the thing: it just goes to show you the desperation that they're going to silence or make somebody out that they're crazy, everything else. I mean, I've been saying things down there for years down there, but where has been Jim Hendren and Asa the last 3 years on all this corruption and everything else going on? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, there's a culture.
How...
There's a culture of corruption at the state capitol, and it has happened under Republican leadership. Brian, I don't want to, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to also get your take on this, because one of the things that Senator Hendren said was, he said that Conduit, they invited the Libertarian candidate for governor on to speak several times, but, the Governor Asa Hutchinson's never been on. Well, I can't speak for Conduit, but I would guarantee you that Conduit would welcome the governor to come on anytime and answer to some of the things that have happened that are not very Republican under his leadership, like increasing government spending by over $600 million and increasing taxes on the people of this state. Those are not very Republican traits. And yet, and of course, he's not going to come on, because he wouldn't even debate me when I was running against him for governor, which I think the Republican Party should have called him out on that. The Republican Party chair should have called him out on that and said the Democrats have had a debate televised statewide, and the Republican Party should do the same for the Republicans in this state. And that did not happen. And of course, I never got the chance to debate the governor and call him out on statewide television for the issues that I had with him. So anyway, I also wanted to know from you this not speaking part, this thing that Hendren said about, well, that you shouldn't be able to speak at the committees. They don't want Conduit speaking to the committees. You know what Conduit does to the committees? They go to the Republican committees and they want to tell them about the voting record of the Republicans. That's all and Hendren doesn't want to do that, because the voting record is not what you say you do, it's what you really do.
Yeah, I mean, it's got where down there where they talk about how, we've talked about this before, how they lie to people when they sit there and say, this is saving money. Well, no, as we've pointed out multiple times, if I was going to spend $100 million more next year, and now I'm only spending $50 million more next year, that doesn't mean I save money. And then who increased the spending, like they're talking about Medicaid spending? Well, who exponentially increased Medicaid spending the last 3 years when they come into office, and then all of a sudden it stays flat, which I don't know. You can't believe anything they say that's accurate, but if it was, or it retracted, it's like, well, you've been in there 3 years. I mean, we've wasted millions of dollars, and then now all of a sudden, right here in election year, you're figuring out how to do something and say something to get a political soundbite. But this is
actually
all
not
about,
just millions. Not only have we wasted millions, hundreds of millions, but we've also lost millions of dollars that's unaccounted for to this day. For example, Department of Human Services, they've misplaced over $43 million. They don't know where it is. Nobody seems to know where it is, and that's our money, $43 million. As if how did that happen?
And we'll hold them accountable. At least you've got legislators right now that are still trying to make sure that the director shows up and answers those questions. And
they call it an account. They think it might be an accounting error. How do you lose $43 million?
And then why do you promote the person that may have made the error?
And then how much money?
Like that, why do you promote?
Do you know how much money we're spending? We're paying an accounting firm, I believe, from Illinois. Like how many millions to find the error for us? I'll bet you we've got a good accountant or two in Arkansas that could probably find it. Why are we having to spend?
Audit department. We have a great audit department.
Why are we hiring a company from out of state? Why, if we're going to hire somebody to find money that our government lost, why aren't we hiring an Arkansas entrepreneur so we can keep that money in the state? See, these are the things that just drive me crazy, because the people of Arkansas, unless you're staying on top of this stuff, you don't know about it, and it's appalling and frustrating because people don't know.
And institutional knowledge will be lost, and it will be with legislators too. Those that know that there are issues when, for instance, when on the committee, if a few of us are gone, then what happens when the next legislators come in that had no knowledge of that? They let it go.
Right.
And all of a sudden it doesn't matter where the 43 million is. What a shame.
And we also lost, how many millions over with the Department of Human Services contract with some new equipment?
It's just, the numbers are so high now, it's staggering. And maybe Brian,
25 million. Brian, how much did we lose with the computer. It was a software program for DHS.
They spent $90 million on a system that did absolutely nothing. But here's the thing that
$90 million. Did we recover that money since the system didn't work for Obamacare, or was it Arkansas works because our Republican governor wanted us to have socialized medicine in Arkansas, so he twisted the arms of Republican legislators to vote for something that they promised their constituents they wouldn't support. But now we have it, and now it's devastating the state financially. Did we ever recover that money that we lost that was because of bad equipment?
No, and we're not recovering the money for the big insurance companies because they're protected. And you have legislators down there that that are part of it. I mean, you have a few people that make a few comments in a paper, but after that it ends. And they do not. This really gets back to Governor Beebe. It gets back to the leadership. It gets back to the leadership that was down there the last 3 years. I mean, this stuff comes out, and then no legislators will actually. I mean, they might say something in a committee meeting or grab a headline like they're doing something, but there's nothing else done. Everybody else just stays quiet down there. I mean, it is just no one starts calling. I mean, here's the thing. You know, we're
approaching a break, Brian. So wrap it up pretty quickly.
Backing up the Brinks truck at DHS, hauling off millions of dollars, and then now all of a sudden this comes out, and they want to start doing something now. And, you know, they've had opportunities. Jim Hendren didn't support Medicaid disclosure. He did one time and then not. And then they've come up with every excuse in the world. And the reality is it protected people like Jeremy Hutchison, who's getting, as we know, this is just what we know, $500,000 at the same time he's voting on stuff up there. I mean, Michael Lamoureux, I mean, it just keeps going and going. And, I mean, there's a point in time there that, you know, I've spent time down there that you didn't know what was going on. But then when I started saying something, in 2015, when I was on Fox News about we weren't doing redetermination on these Medicaid enrollees and beneficiaries, and you know what? It wound up busting out, and they couldn't keep it under wraps anymore. But you know,
Brian, I have to interrupt you on that thought.
Covering this up for the people that should be responsible for it. I mean, and
there
now
is,
Jim Hendren wants to sit there and say, well, you're a terrorist because you go to a county committee and you present a different opinion, or you at least present something different side. You're a terrorist. That's how he.
Okay,
that's
Brian,
how they use words to
manipulate,
to try to discredit you before you even get there. That's what they're trying to do, is trying to keep any type of different opinion, the truth or anything, responsibility that is on them. They've been down there for 3 years. I mean, this is nothing new.
Brian, we're in a break. I'm going to have to toss to a break. We're going to finish talking to Brian in just a moment. We're going to have to go to a break. We got a quick break we have to take, and then we're going to finish with Brian in just a few moments. So, Brian, stay with us. Sorry to have to interrupt you. We got to take this break. Thanks.
Plant in the U.S. anyway. You'd like to get it in Arkansas. Perhaps you can use some tax dollars to lure the company here. So there's no real clear-cut answer whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. It depends on what side you're coming down on. Clearly, you don't want to use taxpayer money to go to a company outside of the U.S. On the other hand, if you can invest $100 of taxpayer money and it generates $1,000 worth of activity with new jobs and the purchasing power that the new employees have, that may be a good investment.
You know, I really appreciate your thoughts on that. I mean, I to be honest, I disagree with the concept of, you know, giving taxpayer dollars to companies to try to get them to locate here, because I think if they can be recruited here, they can be recruited away. I would rather just, I don't know, eliminate the corporate income tax and things like that. Try to treat all businesses equally. Here in
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, the Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. The new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
The government better not tax our patience.
the more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Tractor review. We're on. All right. Thanks for joining us. Having a little bit too much fun on the set with Senator Linda Collins Smith and Senator Brian King on the phone with us. Brian, we got a hard break coming up at 7:30. And I wanted to ask you this because I love you. I love your voting record, #1 most conservative voting record in the state of Arkansas in the Senate. And I wanted to hear from you because you were beat in the May primary. We're losing you to a guy that, to someone that ASA endorsed and supported. And I just want to know, what are you going to do now? Are you going to pull out of politics? Or can we still count on you being engaged and involved and helping us straighten out state government?
I think I'm going to be engaged, involved. Like I said, the next 4 months, I think that hopefully Senator Collins Smith's going to work on some things in judiciary. We have, right now, you look at, one thing about Jeremy Hutchison is not just what's come out and what he's been involved in and what he's been accused of and what he's been a part of, is the result. He's been judiciary chairman since 2013, and we now have a crime crisis. We have a prison crisis, okay? We have a probation and parole crisis. And who is responsible for that? Asa Hutchison. Jeremy Hutchison was the lead person that Jim Hendren, everybody turned to try and solve all these problems, and things are far worse. It's going to get where the result of everything they're trying to do, as we said, they were spending too much money. Now they create this tax thing to lower taxes, but yet everything winds up being a tax shift. They can't. We don't have money for highways. The results is that they spend at the end of the year on $5.6 billion. They say we have a $44 million surplus. They're virtually spending every dollar that comes in. And what's
now the highway department says that none of the gambling money is going to go toward, if we get that, none of that's going to go toward roads and highways either. They wanted to make sure because they're saying
they
that
create one that's saying something that actually doesn't happen. It consistently happens. So if you consistently just keep saying the same thing, eventually, everything that they said about I was crazy, a bully, mentally unstable, whatever else, about all the corruption and everything going on, and what was going on with the Medicaid mafia and all that, And you know what?
Right.
Now they're not saying it. But they have the money, they have the influence, they have the media on their side. They have,
and now they've got federal
system.
prosecutors. Now they got federal prosecutors after them, and we're going to see some big, heavy stuff happening this week in the sentencing phase of those trials. Brian, we got to run. We're on a hard break. Thanks so much for joining us, and we're coming back after the 7:30, and lots more to come. So be sure to stay tuned.
Arkansas, it's a strange situation because we have a skilled workforce shortage. And so we have a situation here, Dr. Busler, where existing Arkansas businesses and their tax dollars are going to recruit, whether it's China or whether it's any company, a business to come in here and then be able to hire existing employees away, right, at a higher subsidized wage. And they claim that that's a job created when, in fact, that's not a job created. I mean, how many of these jobs are going to be filled by people who are right now on the couch, watching TV? And that's where, that's where the rub is how do you actually gauge the effectiveness of this? But regardless of that, I'm a realist. I understand. Look, I may disagree with this, but all states are doing it. Every state out there sweetens the pie and does that sort of thing. So, but my question is this. If you have China and you have the fact that they're stealing $600 billion of intellectual property a year, according to estimates, and then you have this trade war, it really doesn't make much sense to me to do business with China in the state of Arkansas like we are. We are attempting, not just with one, but with 3 other companies. I know one of them may still go through, but the other 3 are on hold because of the trade war. But it just doesn't make sense. And my question is this. If this were Russia, I feel like everybody would, kind of spin out of control if we were trying to cut these deals with a Russian company. But because it's China, it's somehow more acceptable, even though we have the FBI saying, hey, look, we've got investigations into their economic activity in all 50 states. They're stealing from us. They're trying to supplant the United States. What are your thoughts? Is it wise to do business with China given the current geopolitical situation?
Well, I think it's wise to do business with them if we have agreements with them that protect some of the vital interests of the U.S. You made a very key statement there. You said here in Arkansas we really have a shortage of high-skilled labor. If that's the case, there's very little reason to spend taxpayer dollars to bring in companies that are going to take some of the high-skilled labor away from Arkansas companies. The areas that are offering incentives are areas where they have an oversupply of labor and they really need new companies to come in to provide jobs. Based on what you said, that's not the case in Arkansas. So I think the argument for subsidizing Chinese companies to come in and take skilled labor when you don't have enough to go around as it is, I think that argument goes away, and I don't think now it makes any sense to spend taxpayer dollars.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Good morning. So glad you have been joining us. I'm Jan Morgan, filling in for Paul Harrell, and we've been talking about government corruption in the state of Arkansas. We've got a problem at our state capitol. It's a cesspool of corruption, and no, it's just not me saying that. We've got the prosecution of we got 5 indictments right now of lawmakers, legislators in the state of Arkansas. And we just had a 6th indictment, 5 convictions, and now a 6th has been indicted. Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, if you're just now joining us, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson was indicted on Friday when everybody left for Labor Day weekend break on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud, accusing him of misspending campaign donations and underreporting his income on federal income taxes. And, so we've got this government corruption thing going on, and we've got Conduit News, the state's number one source of conservative news and politics. Okay. That's a record. That agency trying to educate people with some of the only truth that we're really getting out of news media in this state, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And yet, Senator Jim Hendren, we played a video. I hope you were able to see it earlier in the show. If not, be sure to go back and watch the show. You can replay it. You need to see that video because Senator Jim Hendren, the governor's relative, Governor Asa Hutchinson's relative, has accused, he's compared Conduit News to ISIS terrorists. And with us now is Josh Waters from Conduit. Josh, thank you so much for being with us. I haven't had a chance to really visit with you about this, but I wanted to know what your reaction was after you saw and heard what the senator said about Conduit.
Well, Jan, I was really disappointed to hear those comments. I've been able to, on behalf of Conduit for Action, travel around the state and meet a lot of great Republicans at these county committees. And the purpose of these presentations is not to attack, not to, undermine things. It's to educate people, give them information, one, about the bills from the session, and two, how their legislators voted. Good and bad. We recognize, you have Senator Linda Collins-Smith there, you have Senator Brian King there. We recognize in the candidates and senators and public officials who vote well. But, we put it all out there. We also talk about, the bad bills of the session, and we'll put out there how they voted. So it was disappointing that, to hear Senator Hendren compare Conduit, an analogy to terrorists. But I think even maybe more concerning is how he seemed to allude, and others have, where we need to silence Conduit. We need to make sure they do not come to these county committees. And I really think that's the wrong way to go. So I was really
that sounds so familiar to me. That is so familiar to me. It's like deja vu, because guess who else they wanted to silence? Another truth teller, another truth speaker. I was just giving facts. I don't attack. When you name call and when you're out there just putting out lies about people, but when you put out facts and they can't dispute the facts, all they want to do is call you names and try to marginalize you rather than just acknowledging that the information you're putting out is factual. I've yet to hear any of them be able to dispute any written word that Conduit has ever put out, because you guys are fact checkers and just extremely diligent. And that, as troubling as this whole thing is with Senator Hendren, I want to know, you told me something else that I think is even more disturbing, and that is that Senator Hendren was able to call you by name, call Conduit by name in his attack. And yet, what were you all told? What was Conduit told by the committee when you were asking to come and speak to the committee and simply give out the names of our legislators, our Republicans, and give their report card?
That's right, Jen. So last year when we reached out to county committees around the state to get this information out there, we're, founded by Republicans. I'm a Republican, strong Republican conservative. So we're reaching out to like-minded groups. And so when we reached out to Benton County, they agreed to have us come, and then a day before, I think it was the day before, the day of, we received an email that there is some, what's the right word to use? I'll just say this. We got an email saying, please do not mention candidates or legislators by name in the county committee. And so that really undermined what we could present, because if you can't say, Senator A voted this way, great for them, or Senator B voted this way, what can you do? So the whole, presentation then turned into the importance of free speech. And that's really been turned on its head again, because, again, the attack now is specifically against Conduit named, and is basically saying we need to silence this group.
Well, you know what, Josh, all I want to do is congratulate you and the folks at Conduit, because you're making a difference when the very people who are at the heart of some of the biggest problems that we have in state government, when those people want to silence you, you must be doing something right. So keep up the good work and congratulations. As difficult as it is to take, congratulations on that.
Well, you mentioned facts, and I did want to, respond to some of what Senator Hendren said in that with some facts, because we need to, address that. He talked about, attacking, other Republicans. He specifically talked about attacking our candidate for governor, the Republican candidate for governor, and talking about the articles. Well, I went and actually looked on the website of Conduit for Action. There's no specific articles attacking ASA since the primary. He talked about the PACs and who they're donating to.
Right.
What's that? He talked about the PACs and who they're donating to. And,
right.
I want to make a clear distinction, too. Conduit, Conduit for Action, Conduit News, Conduit for Commerce are different from the PACs. And he actually mentioned people in that room about who we need to support. And those same groups of PACs have donated to Gayla Hendren McKenzie, have donated to Robin, have donated to Jim Dotson, and supported others in Benton County, other Republicans. He talked about having, the Libertarian candidate for governor on numerous times on the show. Well, one, it's a news show around the state on politics. And to my count, Mark West has been on twice since the primary.
Right.
And so
have you all invited Governor Asa Hutchinson to come on and talk about any of his, explain some of his policies and some of his decisions?
Yes, I know Paul routinely says, please come on, to the governor. And kind of a little backstory on that. Back in January of 2017, during the legislative session, J.R. Davis, the spokesperson for Governor Hutchinson, was actually planning to come on, and I think it was going to try to be a weekly thing. I know he does that with Dave Ellswick. And then all of a sudden he backed out, and since then, hasn't been on. And so, I think have the Libertarian on, have the Democrat on, have the Republican on for a show that has as big of a reach as Conduit News to get, all the news out there. So,
and the sad truth is, Josh, can I just say this? When you mentioned Democrats and Libertarians, the sad truth is I looked at, I keep a close watch on the Conduit record of the voting records of our legislators. And the sad truth is we have a number of Republicans who have a worse voting record on conservative policies than some Democrats. I mean, it's pretty sad when you got Democrats that have a better voting record on conservative policies that are aligned with the Republican Party platform than you have some Republicans. I mean, we've got some Republicans that are way on down there. It's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, that's when you go back to facts. A vote is a vote. It's an up or down vote. It's the truth. You can't say, no, I didn't vote that way. Yes, I didn't vote that way. I guess you could if you can challenge how they recorded the vote, but, that's a whole nother issue. But that's the truth up and down vote. So the legislators can then explain their vote. They can, spin it however they want to. But to say, something's false whenever it's an up or down vote, I don't know how you can make that contention. So, that's what we try to do. Now, are we, do we have our own positions? Absolutely. And that's what I believe is pushing the Republican Party platform. A more limited government in Arkansas, shrinking the size and scope of government. Right. And that's what the scorecard's really based on, the economic freedom filter.
I think Senator Linda Collins-Smith wanted to ask you a quick question. Did you?
I do. I just want to make a statement about something that Josh said about the up or down votes and our record. That's our record. We may even want to change our mind. You may feel like you didn't know enough about it when you voted. You may want to state that to your community or to your committees. But Josh, the one thing I love about not only Conduit News and Conduit for Commerce is this, and in action is that they put the bills out that they want to grade, just like Family Council, which I love, they grade now.
Right.
And I've said, grade me. It's okay because it brings, show me what your questions are. Come to me, but grade us. I'm okay with that. And so I just hope that the grading scales are accurate, and I feel good about what Conduit did. I know how my vote was. I don't have an issue with how they graded me. And if I can tell you, if I do not vote on a bill that they want to grade me on, they're going to go ahead and grade me anyhow. And they're going to say something to Linda. And I think staying neutral in this and talking to us, sometimes we may feel attacked, but we're legislators, and it's about policy to me. Policy. Are we conservative or are we not?
Right. Good point. Well, Josh, is there
Yeah.
anything else that you wanted to counter regarding Senator Hendren's statements?
Well, I just would encourage everyone to get involved. Conservatives across the state, those in the Tea Party, those who may be considered conservative independents, to get involved in their Republican county committees. I think it is the most viable vehicle to making sure we have a more limited government. The platform is conservative. I think most people in Arkansas can get behind the platform, and let's work to implement it. So I would just encourage you to do that, and do not be afraid, to talk with your legislators, to go to these county committees and talk about the issues. Because if we can't talk amongst ourselves, fellow Republicans, about these important issues that are affecting our state, I don't know where else we're going to do it. So I encourage people to get involved and to speak out, and do not let people silence you when you're trying to affect policy in the state.
Okay. Well, thank you. Some words of wisdom there. Josh Waters with Conduit. Thank you, Josh, so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Jen.
Senator Linda Collins Smith, you were talking about voting and the voting record. I think, now you tell me where I'm wrong, or if this is something that can be fixed, but as a citizen of Arkansas, it irks me that, and I saw it happen over and over again in committees, where legislators who were under pressure from another source, say the governor's office or from someone else, to vote in a way that's inconsistent with the way their constituency would want them to vote. I've seen legislators duck out, for certain votes, get sick, not show up, go answer their cell phone in the middle of a really important vote in committee. And to me, every legislator should be forced to vote on every issue. And if you have to take a phone call, if you are sick, you should have a way to call in and vote. Because when you don't vote in a committee or on the floor, the people that elected you are not getting a voice on that particular issue. And I think that is wrong. You're getting paid to represent your constituency. And every time you duck out or bail on a vote, you're letting down the people. Am I wrong?
I think that I would disagree as a whole that your statement. I think we should be there, and I think we should vote. There, if you're going to say, I have to represent the people, and sometimes I have to take a phone call in order to do that. And so you can't be in session till 8 o'clock every night and get everything done. So you will take calls, especially toward the end of the session. You're going to. Some people duck out.
How do we stop that?
Daryl, that's not either that or we go longer.
Oh my gosh, we disagree on something.
Yes.
Can't believe it.
But I don't think that we disagree on what you're saying. We should vote. We should represent the people as a whole. Will you miss some votes? Yes, but I try very hard to be in my seat to vote. And most legislators do. But sometimes you'll see that happen.
I saw it happen to a bill that you wanted to push. I saw the games being played, the good old boy games, and I saw legislators that were so tense and so nervous about the pressure they were getting from all sides that I thought, man, he's going to get sick. He's going to throw up.
Yeah, and what you're going to see are legislators that fall into that, get a habit of that, it seems like. Very few can mess up or do that once and then come back. It's a shame. You should be there to vote. So as a whole, I agree with you. But I know how many hours I spend in my seat.
But if you can't be there to vote, why can't you just have your vote recorded in advance? You know what's coming down. Why can't you just be sure that you send a message or say, I'm going to vote, but I can't vote that?
It's not as black and white as you think. I think you've been there. Things don't run just like you want it to run. You have to work around a lot of issues. You've been there. You don't always get to speak on the day you come.
Well, which is also a problem. I think the citizens of this state should be able to look at an agenda and say, well, I want to go and speak on that bill, or I want to go and watch my committee vote on that bill. And it's on the agenda. And then all of a sudden, because the chair doesn't feel like he or she's going to have the votes there that they want to fuel their side of the issue, they say, well, we're going to toss this one aside. I saw that happen on one of your bills.
You have, and I'll say in the hot seat, let the public. And here's what happens intentionally from leadership. They cram everything into a short amount of time, and you're supposed to get everything done if you want those bills to go through. You're running to other committees. You're literally at the end going to other committees, present your bill, and you're not in your seat. That happens. But if we're going to do that, they need to quit pushing us to the point where at 8 o'clock at night, you're still presenting bills, and there's not enough hours in the day, and they're cutting us off before we can actually do a good job with those bills that we were allowed to file.
And also have a problem with...
What point do you stop spending taxpayer dollars? There has to be a better plan with that. But I think it's intentional by certain leadership to make sure you can't get all those things
Well,
done.
I think one way to stop spending so much taxpayer dollars is stop presenting bills. I want legislators to stop putting more bills and more fees and more license and more requirements on the people. I would like to see legislators go down there and say, what can we repeal? How many laws can we take off? What was it, 1,100 laws passed in the last session? As if we needed any more? My goodness, I'm ready for legislators to get the government out of our lives. Let's talk about repealing. But I also have a problem with shell bills. You shouldn't be voting on a bill and you don't know what's in it because it hasn't even been finished. Why is that allowed?
Well, I don't think you should vote for a bill that doesn't have a body. You can file
but
a
I
bill.
saw it happen. You saw a file,
bill.
shell bill. Okay, file.
File
right.
it. But why would you want to vote for a bill that isn't filled in?
Well, I talked to a legislator about the enhanced carry bill, which I fought against, and you fought against, and he was shocked at some of the things that ended up in it that he didn't know were in it.
But
it's
that's
like,
not
okay,
a
you're one
shell
of the
bill.
sponsors.
That's a bill they didn't read and didn't pay attention to. Because
But he was a sponsor of that bill.
But we were heavily debated. Well, they have my name on there. They didn't remove it. I didn't sponsor that bill. Not that bill. That's the enhanced carry mess, as I call it. We're still battling.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that Wednesday. Tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, we're going to actually tear down the enhanced carry legislation. You've heard me say it. You've heard Patriots of 746 say it. You've probably heard Paul. You've heard a number of people say that whole enhanced carry thing is nothing but 25 pages of additional restrictions. It's garbage. And we're actually going to stop just saying that. We're going to break it down for you tomorrow. We're going to tell you about each area of that enhanced carry that is so pathetic that I'm telling you, as a concealed handgun license instructor, as a state police instructor, I refuse to teach it, and I refuse to even get it.
Good. I
So
do too.
yeah,
That's right.
okay. We've got to take a break. Senator Linda Collins-Smith, hope you're going to stay with us for those last couple of minutes. All right. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
To provide jobs. Based on what you said, that's not the case in Arkansas. So I think the argument for subsidizing Chinese companies to come in and take skilled labor when you don't have enough to go around as it is, I think that argument goes away, and I don't think now it makes any sense to spend taxpayer dollars to bring Chinese companies in.
I appreciate you coming on the program. It's always great to talk to you, Dr. Michael Busler. And I followed you on Twitter after our interview. Did you see that? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see
Okay.
that. Yes,
All right,
I
folks.
appreciate that.
It's at M Busler, at MBUSLER on Twitter. Follow him. He is an economics professor, finance professor at Stockton University, public policy analyst, and you can see him as a columnist over at Newsmax, LifeZet, and townhall.com. Dr. Busler, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All righty. Thank you. Folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to be back.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Good morning, everyone. 7:54, excuse me. I'm getting old. Can't read that far away. But anyway, Jan Morgan filling in for Paul Harrell. We're getting the bottom of the top of the hour now, getting ready to wrap things up here with Senator Linda Collins-Smith. We've been talking on the show about government corruption in the state of Arkansas. We've gone over a number of things. In case you're just now joining us, we already had 5 legislators indicted, and now we have a 6th indicted just before the Labor Day weekend. Senator Jerry Hutchinson, relative of Governor Asa Hutchinson, indicted on 12 counts of wire and tax fraud using campaign money for lavish gifts and vacations and that sort of thing is what he's been accused of. And of course, the sentencing phase of one of those trials is starting Wednesday, I believe. So, there's a lot of talk around Little Rock right now, around the state capitol, that some folks who didn't think they were actually going to end up going to jail are looking like they're going to end up going to jail. And as a result of that, some of them may be trying to make some deals, and some more information may be coming down the pike about people that maybe thought they were protected. So keep your eyes and ears open and paying attention over the next couple of days. Some big things could be happening. We'll see. I've heard, but we're going to wait and see. Linda, once again, the people of this state, what do they need to do to help right this ship?
They have to be involved. There's no way to change policy if you don't go vote.
What are some ways we can, like, the voting is one way. That's one way. Also, people are busy. So, but voting, they give you so many days to vote. It's like, okay, if you can't get off of work, you can do absentee voting. Surely out of all those hours, you can find time to at least do that. If you don't, your voice is not heard. And of course, the corruption will continue.
Yes.
Also, some other things we can do. Josh mentioned, and several people have mentioned on this show, get involved in the Republican committees. If you're a Republican and you're conservative and you don't like the direction that the Republican leadership has been taking our state, then you need to get involved in the Republican committees. I just joined the Garland County Republican Party. I'm really excited about that. They're actually voting on me Thursday night. So I attended a committee meeting, and I'm already a member of the Garland County Republican Women. I'm a member of the Tusk Club, Republican Tusk Club. So, I'm going to get involved on the state level with the Republican Party and, see if I can learn a few things and figure out how we can educate more people to get more actively involved with our state government as Republicans, so we can get some true Republican Party platform legislators in leadership running our state.
Conservatives have to be involved. Don't let more liberal members run you off, and it's a problem. People who are very conservative do not like liberalism, and so they can respect people who are liberal, but in your Republican committee, it's a true conservative. It should be conservative. So be a platform Republican, not just a Republican.
Right. Well, apparently that was one of those controversial things that they thought I was talking. I was talking to different Republican committees around the state, and when the same people that are part of the problem started complaining to the Republican committees that I shouldn't be allowed to speak because I'm divisive. In fact, it was kind of like
Me
this.
too.
You too? Oh, you too? Wow.
We
need a hashtag Me Too. Too conservative. Too divisive because you're conservative. But all I've ever said was there's a place we can all meet, regardless of how you feel as a Republican or how I feel. We can all meet at this one place. It's called the Republican Party platform. It's in writing. Here are the things that we as Republicans believe in. If you stick with that, not just say that's who you are, but actually legislate like that and lead like a Republican, then you won't have any problems from me.
That's exactly right.
Right. Or from you.
And we will disagree on certain things. And I think education, one of the things I love about our conservative organizations, talk shows, is that people are being educated, that they've got to go to the polls. What good is the education if you don't go vote?
Okay.
So it's very critical.
And you have to know where you can get your education too.
That's
It's
right.
very important that you get a reliable news source. What is that? It's hard to find these days. But I can tell you one thing. I can tell you where I go. It's Conduit News, because I have yet to find mistakes in their articles. Those people are diligent and they are meticulous about getting the facts straight. And they will call out bad Republicans just like they'll call out Democrats. They just want people to be truthful, and they want people to represent the constituents who elected them. And so, that is the one place. And I can tell you, as people may not know this about me because they know I'm a gun range owner, but 27 years of my life was an award-winning TV investigative journalist, exposing waste, fraud, and abuse in government. So do I know how to find good journalists? Find them at Conduit. Check out their website, www.conduitnews.com. www.conduitnews.com. Yes, that's where you need to go. Good news and information. Thank you, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, for joining us. You're a great co-host. And folks, I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about lots of things. So join us then. And Paul Harrell will be back next Monday. But you're stuck with me for the next couple of days. See you later. Good job.